It's 2025, and while someone like me will always have a soft spot for those horror movies released in the 80s and 90s, the end of the 20th century was not the end of great horror movies, and it's shaping up to be a good time to be a horror fan. So in this video, we're going to delve into 25 great supernatural horror films released over the last 25 years in about 25 minutes. If this kind of thing is your jam, then go ahead and hit that like button, appease our algorithm overlords, and subscribe for future expeditions into other horror subgenres. Now, the term genre is a famously nebulous concept, and defining horror can be challenging. I've seen many arguments play out over what constitutes horror, and if I'm being honest, I find the debate to be exhausting. To paraphrase Supreme Court Justice Potter Stewart, I know it when I see it. He, of course, was discussing hardcore porn, but the sentiment is still the same. So to make it simple, I've decided to narrow our scope for this video, and a film simply has to meet a few straightforward criteria. Is the film's primary goal to elicit fear? Does it feature any supernatural element? Was it released after 1999? And have I seen it? Also, I'm keeping this one mostly to US releases, and if you stick around, you'll find out why. Things are going to be presented mostly chronologically, and obviously there's no academic backing for these choices. It's just a list of films that I think any horror completionist should check out. If you have your own thoughts, and I really hope you do, let's have a conversation down in the comments section below. Now, without further ado, let's get spooky. In The Others, it's 1945. Nicole Kidman's character Grace Stewart and her two photosensitive kids live in a dark, isolated mansion. After new servants arrive, a series of eerie occurrences lead Grace to believe that the house is haunted. But by who? The Others is a classy horror movie which makes it stand out in a market that was crowded with schlocky titles like 13 Ghosts, Ghost of Mars, and Jason X. Nicole Kidman's always great and anchors this moody gothic haunted house movie. Its twist earned comparisons to The Sixth Sense for pretty obvious reasons, but it's got a classic throwback appeal for anyone who loves a gothic ghost story. It's a slow burn, and that approach may put off some of you gorehounds, but patient viewers should find it rewarding. The Ring was a game changer. Just try to tell me that the image of that corpse in the closet isn't forever seared into your brain. In it, a journalist played by Naomi Watts investigates a really unsettling videotape that seemingly causes the death of anyone who watches it within 7 days. After she views the tape herself, she has to race against the clock to uncover the tape's origins before her and her son's time run out. We all know that remakes get a bad rap, and often deservedly so, but The Ring makes a strong case that sometimes the remake can surpass the original. I'm a massive fan of analog horror, and this movie is a touchstone of the subgenre. It's also partly responsible for my love of Asian cinema, as it led me to seek out the original and countless others like it. In The Exorcism of Emily Rose, Laura Linney stars as a lawyer defending a priest who's accused of negligent homicide after a young girl dies during an exorcism. If you haven't seen this movie, and you rolled your eyes at the title, I don't blame you. For every good exorcism movie, we're subjected to like 100 that suck ass. But trust me, give this one a try. It cleverly alternates between courtroom drama and flashbacks of Emily's possession, and that framing allows it to explore the conflict between science and spiritual explanations for her affliction. It's pretty smart, super creepy, and Jennifer Carpenter's visceral commitment to the bit as a possessed Emily makes for one of the strongest entries into this often played out subgenre. Just like, don't look up the true story. It's by far one of the most upsetting true stories I've ever heard, and way more unsettling than anything you're going to find on this list. In 1408, John Cusack plays a cynical author. He writes about the paranormal, but he doesn't even believe in any of the stuff that he's capitalizing on. Well, after receiving a mysterious postcard from the Dolphin Hotel, he checks in to room 1408, despite warnings from the hotel manager, played by Samuel L. motherfucking Jackson himself. And wouldn't you know it, he gets a whole lot more than he bargains for, finally proving to him that there are supernatural forces at work in the universe. This is one of a few Stephen King adaptations you're gonna find on this list, and while these days, thanks to filmmakers like Mike Flanagan, we take for granted that King adaptations can actually be good, it's easy to forget just how many have been really bad. This one, along with the next on the list, arguably kicked off the King Renaissance we're enjoying today. After a violent storm, an otherworldly mist envelops a small Maine town, unleashing a Lovecraftian nightmare onto the locals. Thomas Jane plays a father desperately trying to protect his family from whatever monsters lurk in the mist, but when it comes down to the real threat, the call is coming from inside the house. Frank Darabont, the acclaimed director of Shawshank Redemption, clearly wanted to prove he could play in the horror sandbox better than most with his adaptation of King's short story. It's part B monster movie, part cosmic horror, and a scathing depiction of the dangers of religious zealotry. It shows the lengths that people will go to when they believe they're out of options. And it's the choices of everyday people that lingers long after the looming eldritch horrors vanish. The ending, by the way, is a much more bleak conclusion than the one in King's story, but it's a gut punch that leaves the viewer reeling. When it comes to the found footage subgenre, the Blair Witch Project may have lit the torch, but Paranormal Activity has undoubtedly carried it through the 21st century. What, are there like a half a dozen movies by now? Maybe more than that? In the original, a young couple believes their suburban home is haunted by a ghost. Katie's douchey boyfriend Micah sets up cameras all throughout the place to capture the ghostly goings-on, documenting increasingly sketchy paranormal occurrences. Spoiler alert, things do not end well. Look, I know the found footage genre ain't for everyone, and it's easy to pick apart a movie where mostly nothing happens, but I found it to be a great gimmick executed perfectly. The mundane setting and naturalistic performances make it an easy buy. This movie was shot in just 7 days at Pelly's own house and went on to be one of the most profitable movies ever, thanks to the backing of Steven Spielberg. Long before reaching mainstream success with the X trilogy, genre fans were already singing the praises of Ty West's The House of the Devil, thanks to its pitch-perfect ode to the era of VHS and the Satanic Panic. In it, a college student named Samantha, played by Jocelyn Donahue, takes an easy-money babysitting gig at an eerie house, but naturally, things are very much not what they appear. The movie is a vibe. It feels like something you vaguely remember catching on late-night cable, but can't quite piece it together. Shot on 16mm to perfectly evoke its 1980s inspirations, it feels both fresh and familiar. Its ending might be a little rough around the edges, and I don't think it lands quite as well as it could have, but everything leading up to it showcases West's undeniable talent, and he'd soon return with a more polished execution of a similar template. Oh, and by the way, you're gonna spot Barbie's Greta Gerwig alongside horror icons Tom Noonan, Mary Woronov, and director A.J. Bowen in supporting roles. This brings us to 2011 with the Inkeepers. At the Yankee Peddler Inn, a once thriving and swanky hotel in its final days of operation, two bored employees and amateur ghost hunters, Claire, played by Sarah Paxton, and Luke, played by genre mainstay Pat Healy, decide to investigate the hotel's alleged supernatural activity. And when you know it, they get more than they bargained for. Director Ty West was inspired to write and direct The Innkeepers after staying at the real-life Yankee Peddler Inn while filming The House of the Devil. While there, some of his crew supposedly reported strange experiences. I don't know if that's true or if it just sounded cool for him to say it, but either way, what a great backstory for making a movie. The Innkeepers is a perfect companion piece to House of the Devil. It's similar in style and structure, but far more character-focused in a way the previous film wasn't. It's arguably a more accessible movie, and the ending clearly showcases West's growth as a filmmaker. In Sinister, fame-obsessed true crime author Ellison Oswalt, played by the always fantastic Ethan Hawke, discovers a series of old Super 8mm footage in the attic of the home he just purchased, after a familicide happened there. I mean, I'm sure you got a deal on it, but still, it's a bad move. Didn't even tell the family either, what a dick. As Ellison digs further into the mystery behind the videos, he unwittingly makes his family the next target of a demon that looks like he's an ex-member of the band Slipknot. A study conducted by Broadband Choices via Forbes titled The Science of Scare Project brought together 50 people of various ages and tasked them with watching 50 horror movies. Through tracking heart rates, the test determined the 35 scariest films ever made, with Sinister topping the list. Not sure why they didn't just rank the top 50, but who am I to argue with science? The home movies are genuinely unsettling, with the lawnmower video being a particular standout. The escalation of dread is masterful, even if the third act somewhat crumbles under the weight of the first two. Oculus, written, directed, and edited by Mike Flanagan, is a supernatural psychological horror film about a cursed mirror that drives a family to madness and murder. The film follows two adult siblings, played by Karen Gillan and Brenton Thwaites. They survived the mirror's influence as kids, and now they're determined to end its curse for good. Even if they probably should have just left it alone. Oculus may be one of the more divisive films on this list. Some will find it frustrating due to character choices, which I get. Others for the way the film's inanimate villain can bend reality to deceive both the siblings and the audience alike, which I also get, but me, I found it to be awesomely ambitious, dread-inducing, and a clever conceit that pulls you into its twisted logic. There's other haunted mirror movies out there, but for my money, this one is easily the most polished and intellectually engaging. Flanagan, of course, will go on to direct some of the best stuff Netflix has to offer, and a few more movies you'll hear about very soon. Ed and Lorraine Warren are two of the world's most renowned ghost grifters, thanks in no small part to Hollywood's enduring obsession with the phrase based on a true story. But as horror fans, we owe them a particular debt of gratitude for being the loose inspiration behind classics like the Amityville Horror and, more importantly for our purposes, 2013's The Conjuring. In it, the Warrens, played with incredible chemistry by Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga, are summoned by the parents to investigate unexplained and deeply disturbing happenings. Bold move killing the dog, by the way. James Wan's work on the Saw franchise put him on the map, but it was The Conjuring that raised his profile to what it is today. It makes Ed and Lorraine characters we can genuinely root for, unlike their real-life counterparts, thanks to those fantastic performances. And it's a film that's both widely accessible and genuinely creepy. The clap scene is so simple and so iconic. The Conjuring universe has entries that range wildly in quality, but I'd argue The Conjuring 2 is almost just as good as its predecessor. Let me know if you agree. Genre icon of the 21st century and someone who's never turned down an interesting horror project, Micah Monroe stars as Jay, a young woman who's recently contracted an STD, which in this instance stands for sexually transmitted demon. No matter where she goes, it's always in relentless pursuit. It follows. I don't know exactly what it is, but I do know that the film's ambiguity and lack of neat closure make it follows a true thinker, open to endless interpretation. This movie is a pure mood piece and capitalizes on a lingering, inescapable sense of dread while never getting too bogged down in little things like a plot. Sometimes that's more than enough for me though, and it wears its Carpenter influences proudly on its sleeve, featuring an awesome pulsing synth score by Disasterpiece. This is an absolute must-watch for genre fans. Audiences have never seen a filmmaker more devoted to period accuracy than our boy Robert Eggers, and in 2015, his debut ensured that audiences everywhere would soon know his name. The Witch stars Anya Taylor-Joy as Thomasin and Ralph Ineson as William, the daughter and patriarch of an ostracized Puritan family living in the early 17th century New England. After the disappearance of William's newborn son, Samuel, grief and frustration send the family spiraling toward the abyss, while Thomasin is drawn down another, perhaps more sinister path. The film masterfully explores traditional gender roles, old world superstition, religious fanaticism, and the insidious ways that repression can ravage relationships. It can, at times, feel challenging or inaccessible due to that commitment to the bit, but fortunately, the performances speak for the characters even if you can't catch exactly what the hell they're talking about. I love found footage, creepy clowns, and movies to watch around Halloween, and House LLC ticks all those boxes. It begins with news coverage of a tragedy at a local haunt and then backs up to introduce us to the people who created the haunt and what happened to them that fateful night. At times, you may have to excuse its lack of polish, but it's a legitimately scary movie with some of the spookiest clowns you'll ever encounter. This is a scrappy little indie movie that's gone on to launch a franchise with plenty of devotees like myself. If you haven't watched it yet, wait for October, check it out, and then come back and thank me later. From the visuals to the music, Southbound is an anthology that simply oozes cool. It has a throwback appeal that I'm a total sucker for. The synopsis? Well, that's tough, and the less said about it, the better. But just know that Larry Fassenden is a radio DJ and like a narrator of sorts, almost a Rob Serling or a Crypt Keeper. If any of that means anything to you, then this is your kind of movie. But if none of that stuff resonates, it's a little harder to say whether you'll dig it or not. As with all anthologies, the segments are of varying degrees of quality, but it has a persistent, almost hypnotic atmosphere that truly pulls you in. It's one of those rare fun anthologies with clever connectivity between segments and a good twist or two, which makes it feel smarter than it probably is. In 2013, up-and-coming director David F. Sandberg won the Who's There Film Challenge with what's easily one of the creepiest horror shorts out there, Lights Out. I saw it first on YouTube. The premise plays on one of humanity's oldest fears, the fear of the dark. In 2016, the feature-length version hit theaters. Rebecca, played by Teresa Palmer, lives with her mentally ill mom Sophie, played by Maria Bello, and her younger half-brother, played by, I don't know, some kid. After the death of Sophie's husband, a shadow-bound entity with a familial connection appears, but only when the lights are out. This movie nails its scary scenes, and I came away a big fan of it. At just 1 hour and 20 minutes, it's a tightly paced shocker with a few truly anxiety-inducing moments in it. The movie hits hard despite its PG-13 rating. Its ending proved to be controversial to some, and I can almost understand why, but I thought it was bold, shocking, and still a lot of fun. The Autopsy of Jane Doe is a masterclass in creating dread. In it, a father-son coroner team played by Brian Cox and Emil Hirsch received the mysteriously pristine cadaver of an unidentified young woman. As they begin her autopsy, they uncover increasingly bizarre and disturbing clues about her death, or whatever. I like this one a lot. It's clinical and procedural during the autopsy scenes, in a way that fundamentally reframed how I view coroners. They're like legit detectives. The way they go about solving problems is intriguing, and the escalation of the supernatural shenanigans is teased out beautifully. There's a certain point when you realize we're past the point of no return, and it's tragic, but in a way that feels like an old urban legend passed down through time, chilling and inevitable. Seek this one out. Andy Muschietti is another short film director turned industry titan. And while Mama's the one that put him on the map, it was his adaptation of Stephen King's It that truly blasted him into orbit. Relying on child stars to carry a movie is risky business. And it's not their fault, just usually not very good, bless their little hearts. And who could possibly carry the torch for Tim Curry's iconic turn in the miniseries adaptation? It Chapter 1 only works if audiences can truly invest in the Losers Club and the iconic Pennywise. Fortunately, the performances are this film's biggest strength. The entire young cast is excellent, and Bill Skarsgård's Pennywise is just the right mix of silly and menacing, though no kid in their right mind would get anywhere near that clown. Is it a little too loud and reliant on CGI? Yeah, probably. But its heart is undeniably in the right place, making you care about these kids, which is what truly matters. And while Chapter 2 doesn't quite hit the same highs despite pitch-perfect casting, I think it's a worthy successor. In my mind, Ari Aster's first theatrical film, Hereditary, was an instant classic. Toni Collette stars as Annie, alongside her family played by Gabriel Byrne, Alex Wolff, and Millie Shapiro. The death of her mother kicks off a series of escalating tragedies for her family. And while this at first plays like a creepy kid movie, a shocking swerve in the second act sends the narrative into a telephone pole. And then even more unsettling directions, culminating in a third act that feels like a punchline to the cruelest prank ever pulled on an audience. Is it overhyped? Underappreciated? I guess that's up to you. I was bowled over by the sheer audacity of it. It's meticulously framed, masterfully acted, and relentlessly bleak, exploring the power of grief left to fester. Unsettling from the first frame to the last, this just may be my favorite horror film of the 21st century. And the Academy leaving Toni Collette out of the nominations that year is one of the biggest travesties in Academy history. Mandy is less of a movie and more of a fever dream, painted in neon and spattered in vengeance. Nicolas Cage stars as Red, a logger whose serene life with his girlfriend Mandy is shattered by a cult led by a real freak named Jeremiah Sand. What follows is a psychedelic, blood-soaked odyssey of retribution. This movie is a total sensory experience, similar only to Cosmato's previous film Beyond the Black Rainbow. It's a gorgeous, horrifying, and utterly unhinged blend of horror, action, and surrealism. If you're looking for conventional horror, keep walking. But if you're ready for something truly singular, a trippy romance turned heavy metal nightmare, featuring Nicolas Cage at his manic apex, Mandy will stick in your skull like a polished battle axe. Mike Flanagan has arguably become the modern master of adapting Stephen King, and Dr. Sleep is a compelling argument for that title, serving as both a sequel to Stanley Kubrick's The Shining and a faithful adaptation of King's own follow-up novel. This film had the unenviable task of trying to reconcile two very different takes on the Overlook, and it largely succeeds. Ewan McGregor stars as an adult Danny Torrance, still coping with childhood trauma and his shining abilities. He crosses paths with a young girl possessing an even stronger shine, and the terrifying cult known as the True Knot, led by a chilling and hypnotic Rose the Hat played by Rebecca Ferguson. The True Knot are psychic vampires that roam the country, feeding on the essence of others with shine, and nobody's off limits. Flanagan masterfully weaves together genuine scares with profound emotional depth, exploring themes of addiction, recovery, and the lingering scars of trauma. It's an ambitious, heartbreaking, and ultimately satisfying continuation of one of horror's most iconic stories. Osgood Perkins, son of Anthony Perkins, and a director who traffics in atmosphere, delivered one of 2024's most unsettling experiences with Longlegs. Scream Queen Micah Monroe stars as an FBI agent who may potentially have a little shining ability herself. She's tasked with tracking down a cryptic serial killer whose crimes span decades and hint at an insidious occult thread. What makes this film so effective isn't its jump scares, but its relentless, almost suffocating sense of pervasive evil in every frame. It's a slow burn that relies on eerie imagery and droning sound that burrows beneath the skin. Plus, Nicolas Cage plays a bizarre and disturbing villain in this film. A friend said it's kind of like Silence of the Lambs, but with an occult angle, and I think that's pretty spot on. This isn't a movie that spoon feeds you answers. Instead, it invites you to get lost in its nightmare logic. And that's precisely what makes Longlegs a must-watch. So the original Smile is an effective, if a little formulaic horror film. So the idea of a sequel, especially one that was pushed out so quickly after the first, potentially beating it out on a best-of list is almost unheard of, right? Yet Smile 2 somehow manages to surpass the original in almost every way. Pop star Sky Riley, played by Naomi Scott, finds herself under the influence of, well, lots of stuff. And then also the Smile Curse. Yeah, it's still got a lot of big, loud jump scares, and yeah, there's still a lot of shots of people grinning just a little too wide, but it's more self-aware and a lot more fun than the first movie. And it's way smarter than it has any right to be, leveraging its premise to comment on the inescapable glare of the public eye and the unique anxieties of modern celebrity. Remakes. One of horror's most consistently maligned categories. The true fans always claim they despise them, despite having to begrudgingly acknowledge that some of the genre's most enduring classics are in fact themselves remakes. Yet Robert Eggers has swiftly cemented his place as a modern master of horror, and his take on Nosferatu only solidifies it. The story is a familiar one. A realtor visits a mysterious count while the titular vampire is sliding into the DMs of his wife. It stars Nicholas Hoult, Lily Rose Depp, and Bill Skarsgård, along with Aaron Taylor Johnson and Eggers' mainstay Willem Dafoe. It's inky, stunning monochromatic imagery, dedicated performances, attention to detail, and the bold choice to give us a Count Orlok unlike any the silver screen has ever seen before more than justify its existence. The outcome is undeniably a modern classic, a genuinely chilling and beautiful work that's reaching shadow stands tall next to its iconic predecessors. Reductive but accurate comparisons to From Dusk Till Dawn and Tales from the Crypt Demon Knight aside, Sinners is a movie that I absolutely love. What Coogler cooks up here is a delicious assortment of ingredients. Delta blues, Prohibition-era gangsters, religion, interesting vampires, and the oppressive Jim Crow-era South, all stewed together with the perfect seasoning to make a gumbo that tastes distinct even if you've had other gumbo before. The film operates on many levels. On one hand, it's a wildly entertaining, blood-soaked genre mashup that unashamedly wears its influences on its sleeve. But even when it leans heavy on homage, Sinners simply oozes cool from every single frame. From its impeccably styled period details to its perfectly curated soundtrack, and their performances are uniformly top tier. Beneath the visceral thrills and undeniable swagger, Coogler explores something far more profound: the power of music and the very fabric of American culture, particularly its hidden systemic evils. The vampires here aren't simply monsters. They offer a Faustian bargain that's almost too good to refuse, twisting power and agency in deeply resonant ways. It's a film that's both a juke-jiving good time and a biting social commentary, a rare and potent combo that elevates it beyond mere genre fare. That concludes our delve into 25 great supernatural horror films from the last 25 years. If there are any glaring omissions, and let's be honest, in a genre this big there always are, let's use the comments section down below and discuss. I'm always eager for recommendations and a good debate. If you enjoyed this expedition into the terrifying and the uncanny, do me a favor. Click that like button and appease those algorithm overlords. Share it with a fellow horror fan, and most importantly, subscribe for more. This is just the beginning of our journey through the various nightmares the screen has to offer. We'll be back soon with more top horror movie lists across other subgenres, diving deep into what truly scares us. Thanks for coming by, and until next time, remember, horror never dies.